I'm Ben Meiselas from the MeidasTouch network. Donald Trump's lawyer, Evan Corcoran, has been forced to recuse himself from further serving as Donald Trump's lawyer in connection with special counsel Jack Smith's ongoing criminal investigation into Donald Trump's theft of thousands of government records, which he concealed at Mar-a-Lago, as well as Donald Trump's obstruction of justice of the Department of Justice and FBI's criminal investigation into Donald Trump's theft of said documents. Now, why has Evan Corcoran been forced to recuse himself? Well, if you take the most benevolent interpretation, Evan Corcoran is a critical witness of Donald Trump's obstruction of justice, but more likely, Evan Corcoran is a criminal co-conspirator with Donald Trump in the theft of these thousands of government records, as well as Donald Trump's obstruction of justice. Here's what we know. A federal judge, the former chief federal judge in the Washington, D.C. federal court, Judge Beryl Howell, has previously made a ruling that Evan Corcoran cannot assert attorney-client privilege before the criminal grand jury in Washington, D.C., in connection with his communications with Donald Trump, because the court found that the crime fraud exception applied. And specifically, the federal judge Beryl Howell found that Evan Corcoran was involved in a criminal scheme with Donald Trump. Now, whether Evan Corcoran was knowingly involved in this scheme or being unwittingly used by Donald Trump as a pawn in Donald Trump's scheme, where Donald Trump provided false information to Evan Corcoran, who in turn provided false information to the Department of Justice and FBI, federal judge Beryl Howell, I think, left that question for another day, but there was a ruling that a criminal scheme took place such to defeat Evan Corcoran's assertion of attorney-client privilege. And now that Evan Corcoran can no longer assert attorney-client privilege, and he is now a critical witness, he has essentially been forced to recuse himself from further representation of Donald Trump. What did we say that MAGA stands for? Make attorneys get attorneys, because Evan Corcoran, Donald Trump's lawyer, now has his own lawyer, as he's increasingly under a microscope by special counsel Jack Smith's ongoing criminal investigation. And just so you know what a recusal means, is a recusal just means that Evan Corcoran saying, I can no longer serve as Donald Trump's lawyer in connection with the ongoing investigation of Donald Trump's theft of these thousands of government records and the ongoing investigation into Trump's obstruction of justice. And just to remind you the role that Evan Corcoran played in this, just to even rewind a little bit further, Donald Trump leaves the White House in January of 2021. He steals thousands of government records. The National Archives say, hey, did you steal thousands of records? Donald Trump says, no, I didn't steal these records. The National Archives throughout 2021 goes, yeah, we think you did. I mean, we're missing a lot of records. So can you please turn it over, or else we're going to get the Department of Justice involved? So in January of 2022, Donald Trump's like, hey, National Archives, I found some documents. Okay, this is it though. This is all I have. And Donald Trump said, just come by Mar-a-Lago and I'll return these documents. And sorry for the misunderstanding, but this is all the documents that I have. And by the way, it's nothing serious. It's just a bunch of newspaper clippings. So come on and get it. So then Donald Trump cherry picks these documents that he wants to turn over. And then he turns over some classified information, top secret information, sensitive compartmented information. I mean, we're talking about some of our nation's top secrets, and he hides them in the newspaper clippings, right? As though he thinks the National Archives are not going to identify these top secret documents. So he says, come on and get it. The National Archives picks it up in January of 2022, and they start looking through the newspaper clippings, and they're like, oh my gosh, there is a bunch of top secret stuff in here, and there's a bunch of classified stuff in here, and sensitive compartmented information, and the National Archives is like, and we're still missing stuff. All right, we're turning this over to the Department of Justice. That's where Evan Corcoran gets involved, because Evan Corcoran then, on behalf of Donald Trump's, basically telling the Department of Justice, hey, we've turned over everything and you've got no right to even ask for anything further. These documents are protected by executive privilege. These documents are his now, and he doesn't even have any other documents, so please go away. Then the Department of Justice top counterintelligence officials are like, no, we're not going away. We know that you've stolen these documents and you can't just steal our records, and especially there's some really sensitive records that we know still exist, so turn it over. Corcoran's like, nah, we're not going to do that. So then the Department of Justice has to go before the grand jury and say, hey, they're not turning this over. We have to issue a subpoena. So then the criminal grand jury in Washington, D.C. in May of 2022 issues a subpoena, all the while Evan Corcoran is still representing Donald Trump. So then the Department of Justice is like, all right, you want to play this way? Here is the subpoena. You have to turn this over within a short period of time. And by the way, in addition to turning over classified documents, in addition to turning over all of the government documents that you stole, we also want to see surveillance footage. Turn over the surveillance footage as well.
And now let's take a quick break to talk about our next partner, Fume. Cold turkey, it may be great on sandwiches, but there's a better way to break your bad habits. We're not talking about some weird mind voodoo from your wacky neighbor or some sketchy message board. We're talking about our sponsor, Fume, and they look at the problem in a different way. Now, not everything in a bad habit is wrong. So instead of drastic, uncomfortable change, why not just remove the bad from your habit? Fume is an innovative, award-nominated device that does just that. Instead of electronics, Fume is completely natural. Instead of vapor, Fume uses flavored air. And instead of harmful chemicals, Fume uses all natural, delicious flavors. You get it. Instead of bad, Fume is good. It's a habit you're free to enjoy and makes replacing your bad habit easy. Your Fume comes with an adjustable airflow dial and is designed with movable parts and magnets for fidgeting, giving your fingers a lot to do, which is helpful for de-stressing and anxiety while breaking your habit. The first time I used Fume, I was shocked at how flavorful and fresh it tasted. Now, it's easy to hold and perfectly balanced and quite honestly, extremely fun to fidget with. The real wood material and sleek design definitely classes it up, and I feel pretty darn cool holding it. Stopping is something we all put off because it's hard, but switching to Fume is easy, enjoyable, and even fun. Fume has served over 100,000 customers and has thousands of success stories, and there's no reason that can't be you. Join Fume in accelerating humanity's breakup from destructive habits by picking up the Journey Pack today. Head to tryfume.com and use code Meidas to save 10% off when you get the Journey Pack today. That's tryfum.com and use code Meidas to save an additional 10% off your order today.
And so finally, Evan Corcoran and Christina Bobb, one of Trump's other lawyers, they then go to the Department of Justice. All right. Come meet us at Mar-a-Lago. We just found like 30 or so more classified documents. We're sorry about that. And then Evan Corcoran prepared for Christina Bobb to sign an attestation under penalty of perjury, stating that Bobb and Corcoran did a diligent search of Mar-a-Lago, and all they could find were these remaining 30 records that are in this red weld folder that is sealed. And a red weld folder is just one of those legal folders that you see the lawyers have when they walk into court. And so they sealed this folder. They had Christina Bobb sign the attestation. Corcoran didn't sign it, but Corcoran prepared the actual written attestation where Bobb says that these are all of the records responsive to the subpoena that was served by the grand jury. And then the Department of Justice takes the subpoena. They take the records. It's like 35, 36, 37 or so additional classified records and top secret records that were not previously turned over. But then the Department of Justice also is like, we know you still have more documents, and now you've lied to us in an attestation in response to a subpoena. You've lied to us. You've lied to the FBI. You've lied to the Department of Justice under penalty of perjury. And now this is clearly obstruction of justice. And not only is Donald Trump involved in it, but it appears Evan Corcoran and Christina Bobb are involved in it as well, since they were the ones who prepared this attestation. They were the ones who responded to this subpoena. Lawyers can't help their clients commit the ongoing crime of obstruction of justice. And then the Department of Justice also gets their hands on surveillance footage within Mar-a-Lago as part of the subpoena. And what they see is that as soon as the subpoena was sent, that Donald Trump had people like this individual who worked at Mar-a-Lago named Walt Nauta, who also worked at the White House, move the boxes around from the storage area to other places to try to avoid detection. So after all of this, after all that background, right, the Department of Justice is finally like, we have no choice but to execute a search warrant here because this has now risen to the level of obstruction of justice. Clearly, it probably did before, but we were trying to be nice, even though maybe they should have just been aggressive from the outset. But they're like, Trump leaves us no choice here, so we have to execute a search warrant and see if he still has these records, right? So on August 8th, they execute a search warrant. The search warrant itself, a probable cause determination, was reached by a federal judge, magistrate judge, Judge Reinhardt, actually on August 5th. The search warrant's executed on August 8th, and lo and behold, we're talking about thousands of other government records that Donald Trump still concealed at Mar-a-Lago, and over 100 classified and top secret and sensitive compartmented information, in addition to the fact that there was like a ton of folders that were designated as top secret or classified designations, and the contents of the folder was empty, right? So the Department of Justice then has to call Evan Corcoran to go before the grand jury to ask him questions. Corcoran, why did you lie to us? Did Donald Trump tell you to lie to us? And what do you think Corcoran said? Corcoran was like, attorney-client privilege. I can't state it. It's part of my confidential communications with my client, so I'm not allowed to divulge it. Donald Trump holds the privilege, and he's asserting attorney-client privilege, so I can't tell you anything. So the Department of Justice is like, okay, Corcoran, you want to play that way? They then go in, they file a motion with the federal judge, Judge Beryl Howell, to say, look, he's making this claim of attorney-client privilege to try to block testifying about his communications with Trump and why he lied to us about turning over all of the records. Not only do we want him to testify, but we want his notes and his communications with Trump because we have a good faith basis to believe he was involved in the criminal scheme with Donald Trump. So Judge Beryl Howell hears briefing from both sides, makes the ruling that more likely than not, Evan Corcoran was involved in a criminal scheme with Donald Trump, orders Evan Corcoran to testify again, to turn over his notes, to provide all of the communications, any recordings, and I believe there's audio recordings as well that Evan Corcoran took in connection with his communications with Donald Trump. And Corcoran testified again. Now, Corcoran's in a lot of trouble. I mean, to be honest, Corcoran is in some serious trouble because did Corcoran directly know that Donald Trump was lying? Was Corcoran told by Donald Trump that all of the documents were turned over, but that Trump lied to Corcoran? So the issue becomes, no matter which scenario it is, whether Corcoran himself was involved in the criminal conduct or whether Corcoran was given false information by Donald Trump to then lie to the Department of Justice and say that all the documents were turned over. Regardless, Corcoran's a key witness. So Corcoran's compromised. Corcoran can no longer represent Donald Trump, and therefore Corcoran said, I'm out. I can't represent you on this case. But here's the thing, folks, and if you want to know, and this is kind of mafia style stuff here, Corcoran's still representing Donald Trump, though, on other cases. He doesn't have to recuse himself from representing Donald Trump in connection with Special Counsel Jack Smith's criminal investigation of Donald Trump's election interference. And he doesn't have to recuse himself on any of the other cases. And here's one of the things that we know about Donald Trump, though, and he's keeping these lawyers very close to him. He's trying to keep these witnesses, like a mafia boss, very close to him. Although the mafia bosses tend to use their own mafia money, Donald Trump grifts off of his supporters. He's raised hundreds of millions of dollars lying about election fraud. And already in 2022 alone, Donald Trump has spent $16 million on legal fees with the money, not his own money, the money that the Save America organization or political action committee raised. That's gone to pay for these lawyers to defend Trump. And also Trump has had these lawyers defend all of the people who work at Mar-a-Lago, all of his aides and dozens of staffers at Mar-a-Lago to try to keep the information very, very, very close. And that's another area where Special Counsel Jack Smith is probing. Special Counsel Jack Smith is probing specifically whether Donald Trump is using these lawyers to try to intimidate witnesses and get witnesses to not tell the truth, the same way Cassidy Hutchinson said to the January 6th committee that the lawyer Trump paid for tried to tell her to say that she couldn't recall information. But again, folks, MAGA, make attorneys get attorneys. That's what it stands for. And Evan Corcoran, of course, is learning this and a perfect case study in this. I'm Ben Meiselas. Thank you all so much for watching. Hit subscribe. We're on our way to 1.5 million subscribers thanks to your support. Also, if you can, check us out at patreon.com/MeidasTouch, patreon.com/MeidasTouch. And finally, wherever you get your audio podcast, just search MeidasTouch Podcast. Thanks for watching. I'm Ben Meiselas. Have a great day. Hit subscribe.
Love this video? Then you'll love the MeidasTouch podcast. Listen as my brothers and I break down the latest news and chat with top political leaders on the fastest growing pro-democracy podcast in the world. New episodes drop every Tuesday and Friday. Add the MeidasTouch podcast right now wherever you listen to your podcasts.